There was another incident that happened in the year Tav Kuf Mem Zayin. This was Tishrei, 1786. An incident that also had a great impact on people to recognize the greatness of the Alter Rebbe because of the great miracle that took place. The previous Rebbe told this story as it was repeated by Reb Pinchas Reizes. Reb Pinchas Reizes was one of the biggest chassidim of the Alter Rebbe. In fact, he was a chayzer, which means he was the one that used to review the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe. When the Alter Rebbe said a Maimer, a Hasidic discourse, he was able to review it word for word, verbatim, as the Alter Rebbe said it. In fact, he reviewed the Maimer in such an accurate way that not only did he repeat the words as the Alter Rebbe said it, he was also able to give it over with the tune, how the Alter Rebbe said his Maimer. The phrases and words, in what tune the Alter Rebbe said them. To the extent that there were times that when the Alter Rebbe gave a Maimer, the Alter Rebbe became so excited that he fell on the floor, rolled on the floor, and as he was rolling on the floor, he continued with the Maimer. The Pinchas would go down on the floor to pick up even those words that the Alter Rebbe said, and he was able to repeat every word the Alter Rebbe said, even those words that he said while he was on the floor. So this chassid of Pinchas related the following story. He said that year, Tav Kuf Mem Zayin, was a very bitter and cold winter. And the winter started early, to the extent that Sukkot, many times, they had to remove the snow from the schach in order to eat in the sukkah. That year, Shmini Atzeres came out on a Shabbos, and he remembered how the Alter Rebbe told Kumza. Kumza was the non-Jew who worked in the Alter Rebbe's courtyard, and he said to him that being it's been snowing all night long, and there's a lot of snow on top of the sukkah, and we're not allowed to eat in the sukkah this way. And he understood to take off the snow, and only then did the Alter Rebbe go into the sukkah and make Kiddush. Many guests came to the Alter Rebbe for Yontif, and it is customary for Chassidim to come to the Alter Rebbe for Yontif. When the Chassidim travel, they would travel primarily by foot, because the basis of coming to the Alter Rebbe for Yontif, and Chassidim in general traveling to the Rebbe for Yontif, is similar to the way the Yidden used to travel to the Beis HaMikdash, Aliyah L'Regel. 3 times a year, during the Yontif of Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, it is a mitzvah to travel to the Beis HaMikdash, Aliyah L'Regel. And the mitzvah is to travel by foot. The word Regel also means by foot. And that's why today we don't have the Beis HaMikdash, but Chayev Adam Lahagdu Pnei L'Labed B'Regel. There's a mitzvah for every individual to greet and to visit his Rebbe on Yontif, because a Rebbe and a Tzaddik is compared to the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, 3 times a year on Yontif, one should visit his Rebbe. And this is the source of this custom that Chassidim come to the Rebbe for Yontif. And just like in the Beis HaMikdash, they would travel by foot, that's how the Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe traveled by foot. And this is the way it continued in the times of the Alter Rebbe, in the times of the Mittel Rebbe, and also the times of the Tzemach Tzedek. Later, Chassidim stopped traveling by foot. But because it was such a bitter, cold winter, many of the Chassidim, when they arrived in the city of Lozhna, were very sick. Some of them had terrible colds. Some of them had very high fever. Some of them had parts of their body that was frostbitten, either fingers on the hand or their toes. And the Pinchas Reizes said that he found an opportunity to ask the Alter Rebbe for a Berachah. It was Hoshana Rabbah, And Hoshana Rabbah, the Alter Rebbe, would always instruct that Michal the Shamish, he was in charge of the shul, to prepare the Sifrei Torah, the Torah scrolls, in a way that it would be appropriate to use them later for the hakafis, for the dancing. And other instructions the Alter Rebbe gave him to prepare the shul. Every year the Alter Rebbe would appoint one of his students to supervise and oversee that the Michal, the Shamish, and all the other young men that help him do the job the right way, the way the Alter Rebbe would like them to do it. So that year, Pinchas says, I was chosen to be the supervisor. Alter Rebbe chose me and gave me instructions what should be done. And then, after everything was finished, I went back to the Alter Rebbe to report that everything was done properly, exactly the way the Alter Rebbe wanted it to be. And I took this opportunity to ask the Alter Rebbe for Berachah. And I said there were many Chassidim that came for Yontif, and they have terrible colds, high fever. Some of them are seriously ill. And the Alter Rebbe sat for some short moments without saying anything, just had his holy head leaning on his hands. His eyes were closed, and he was deep in thought. Then the Alter Rebbe opened his eyes, and he said, in the famous tune that the Alter Rebbe always spoke, in that tune, and he said the following. In reference to Torah, it says, Eish das Lomei, which means Torah is compared to fire. Today is Simchas Torah. Let them bring all the sick people to the Hakafis. The Eish, Eichla Eish, fire will consume fire. The fire, Simchas Torah, will consume the fire that comes from their colds. In other words, the fever that came as a result of their colds. When the Pinchas Reizes left the Alter Rebbe's room, and he gave over word for word of what the Alter Rebbe said, within an hour, the entire city knew of the Alter Rebbe's words. And everybody begged him to repeat what the Alter Rebbe said. And all over they were excited and happy that tonight they're going to go to the Hakafis and they'll be healed. When night came, the time for Hakafis came, the Pinchas Rezer said, I took along a few of my friends, Ephraim Michal of Shklov, Chaim Eliyahu, Dubrovna, and a few other young men, and we went to each and every home to tell them, remind them what the Alter Rebbe said, and those that need assistance will help them come to Shul. It was beautiful to see in every home that we came, the excitement. Even though everyone knew what the Alter Rebbe said, they still begged me to repeat once again, word for word, the Alter Rebbe's holy words. And it was beautiful to see the joy and the excitement that came from this confidence and this bitochen in the Rebbe's words that going to the Hakafis tonight will bring them their cure. But something very unusual happened when we came to the home of Rebbe Isaac. There were two people in Lozhna, older people. One was Rebbe Isaac and one was Rebbe Naftali. They were both great Torah scholars. They were actually giants in Torah knowledge. They were God-fearing Jews, but they were misnagdim. They opposed strongly against the Chassidic way of life and against the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. Rebbe Isaac was called Rebbe Isaac Mechadish, which means Rebbe Isaac the innovator, because he always spoke about himself and took pride in himself in his chidushim, that when he studied, he was able to find new insight and bring something new into the learning. And he'd always talk about, today I was Mechadish this, today I was Mechadish that, so he got the name Rebbe Isaac Mechadish. Rebbe Naftali, also an older man, he was known by the name Rebbe Naftali Zahir, which means Rebbe Naftali, the cautious one. He would always talk about himself and take pride in how cautious he was when it came to halacha. I'm cautious with the way what I eat, I'm cautious of the way I speak. I'm cautious of where I look. I'm cautious in this and cautious with that. So he earned the name, the Naphtali, the cautious one. These two people were older people. They were great Torah scholars, and they studied under the greatest Torah scholars of that generation. They came to the city of Lozhna even before the Alter Rebbe arrived there. And they knew the Alter Rebbe when he came there, even before he was yet a student of the Mezritcher Maggid. And when they heard the Alter Rebbe teaching, they recognized his greatness, and they said that from the days that they studied in their yeshiva under their greatest Rebbes and the greatest Torah scholars of that generation, they haven't heard anything similar to that until they heard it from the Alter Rebbe. So they had great respect for the Alter Rebbe. Later, when the Alter Rebbe became a chassid of the Mezritcher Maggid, they distanced themselves because they were against the approach of chassidus, but they still had tremendous respect for the Alter Rebbe himself. And they would still go to him to ask him questions in things that they didn't understand in their studies. In fact, there was one time where the Misnagdim came out with a declaration against chassidus and against the Alter Rebbe, and these two came out with a protest in defense of the Alter Rebbe, saying that he's actually a great goin and a great tzaddik, and that people should respect him. So these two people, who've been living here for years, and were always misnagdim, nevertheless, Isaac had a nephew who was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. His name was Rebbe Moshe. And Rebbe Moshe was one of the people that came to Yontif, to Lozhna. He came with his two sons and his son-in-law. All four of them became very sick on the way. Rebbe Moshe was older and weaker. His condition was much worse. When Avram the Reifer, Avram the doctor, examined them, he said, the young man, he hopes that they'll be able to overcome their illness. But Rebbe Moshe, because he's an older person, a weaker person, and he has very high fever, I'm in doubt whether he'll be able to survive. Rebbe Isaac was very upset. He was upset that they came, and he just kept shouting that such an act is a mitzvah bo b'avera. And it's true, it's a mitzvah to come greet your Rebbe in Yontif. But to endanger your life in such a way is a mitzvah bo b'avera. It's like a mitzvah that comes by doing an avera. He was very, very upset. When I and my friends came to the house of Rebbe Isaac, we were struck by the scene that we saw. Rebbe Isaac was arguing with the sons of Rebbe Moshe and his son-in-law. They were saying that we have to tell people to come to the house and help us go to shul. All of them were too weak to go to shul themselves. And they were begging him to go call someone to help them go to shul. Rebbe Isaac was screaming at them. And he said, how could you even think of going to shul when you're in such a condition, when you're so sick? They also wanted their father, Rebbe Moshe, to go to shul. And Isaac was shouting for your father to go to shul. That's literally murder. Rebbe Moshe was very sick, high fever. He was in and out of consciousness. The Avram the doctor said clearly he's a chayla mesukin, which means a sick person whose life is in danger, and you want to take him outside? One wind will just blow on him, and that'll be the end of his life, God forbid. That night, when we were supposed to take everyone to Hakafez, in itself was a very bad weather. It was very cold outside. There was a wet snow. The rain and the wind literally penetrated through every bone in your body. There were puddles all over the street outside. So, generally speaking, those who were able went to shul in spite of the terrible weather. But here we came to a situation where we saw these two people arguing. I myself went over to take a look at Rebbe Moshe, and it was shocking, just shocking to look at him. He was pale. You can see the high fever. And then I hear Rabbi Isaac screaming, "Murderers! This is against the Torah to do what you're doing." On the other hand, the children of Moshe were shouting, but the Rebbe said that by taking us to Shul, this will bring out cure. And he's shouting, even in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, this wouldn't be allowed. Even when people went to the Beit HaMikdash, and it was a mitzvah to go, nevertheless it says that people who are sick are exempt from going. And the children are shouting, but we have pure faith in the Rebbe's words that we'll be healed. Pinchas said, to tell you the truth, I myself was very confused. On one hand, I heard what Rabbi Isaac was saying, and especially when I looked at Rabbi Moshe's face and I saw the fever burning. On the other hand, I was impressed with the words of these young men who were simple chassidim, but they had the complete amunah and faith that the Rebbe's words that they will be cured, and they had no doubts, and they had no hesitations about going outside in this weather. To look at it with simple, pure logic, Rabbi Isaac is right. It will be absolutely insane to move Reb Moshe in this weather. On the other hand, if you look at it with the intellect of the Nefesh HaLekis, with the godly soul, the children are right. The Alter Rebbe said this will bring the cure. And from moment to moment, my admiration for these young men constantly grew. And I still remember how I was ashamed of myself, to the point that I made a hachlata, I made a resolution at that moment, that I absolutely must go into the Alter Rebbe, in Yechidus, and ask him for a way to correct this. And I said to myself, look at your opinion. You're the son of Henech Shklover, who is one of the greatest Torah scholars of that generation. You studied by the greatest Torah scholars of Shklov. You studied Shas and Peskin, Chkira. You recognize the Alter Rebbe's greatness through Torah study. It's already your 8th year that you're a student by the Alter Rebbe. And yet, the physical, materialistic, natural part of you is stronger than the godly part of you. And you're worried about going outside. Here are these simple chassidim. One is a tailor, one is a merchant, living in small villages. And dafke they have the pure amunah, the pure faith, the godliness in them and the spirituality in them is stronger than the feelings that come from the physical, materialistic, natural part of their soul. I was so deeply lost in my thoughts, I didn't even feel what was going on around me, until my friend Chaim Eliyahu Dubrovner shook me and said, the doctor said these are the last hours of Reb Moshe. But there was no time to think. Because here I see the children shouting to their father, 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 wake up. The Rebbe sent you shluchim that you should go to the Hakafis. We have to go to the Hakafis of the Rebbe. And there was a tremendous commotion in the room. As I walked in, I see that Moshe has his eyes open now. There's a simcha on his face, and he's begging them they should help carry him to the Hakafis of the Alter Rebbe. Chaim Eliyahu immediately ran to get more manpower. We helped dress Reb Moshe in very warm clothes. He himself was so sick and so weak, he couldn't move a finger. And of course they had to carry him to the Hakafis. So here we are carrying him to the Hakafis, and there was Rabbi Isaac screaming and shouting, murderers, you're taking away this person's life. When we went into the Alter Rebbe's minyan, it was full. Many of the people were the sick people. There were those that were so sick they couldn't even stand, they had to sit. There were those that they couldn't even sit, they were lying down. And there were those that didn't stop coughing. And then there were those that were moaning and groaning from pain that it literally broke your heart to hear them. The one who was probably in the worst condition was Rabbi Shaya Chatimska. He was actually a 60-year-old man, very strong person. He yet went by foot to the Mezritcha Magid, to the Mendel Haradaka, and now he started to go to the Alter Rebbe. He was considered one of the older Chassidim, very big Chassid, but physically very strong. His friends would call him Yankiv Yishaya Kohen Gadol because he was very strong. And the doctor said, doctor, because he's so strong, it looks like the disease got him in a strong way. But he hopes that being such a strong person, he'll overcome it. However, when you look at him, you saw a different thing. You saw a person who looked simply like a log. He looked like he was absolutely lifeless. The Seder by the Alter Rebbe was that when it came to Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres, the Alter Rebbe would first have hakafas privately with a few selected people, his own minion. And that hakafas was called the Yechidus hakafas of the Rebbe. During the hakafas, the Alter Rebbe himself would say every pasuk of Ata Haresa, and the Alter Rebbe himself would be dancing in each one of the 7 hakafas. The Alter Rebbe held the Sefer Torah on the right side, and then when it came to the dancing, he would switch the Torah to the left side, put his right holy hand on the person next to him, and they would start dancing. And the Chassidim who had the privilege to be by this hakafas would say there were no words to describe the feeling and the gathering that they felt present in the room at the time. It only gave them some insight into what it must have been when the Yidden were in the Beis HaMikdash. After the Alter Rebbe finished with these hakafas, he would go to the sukkah, make kiddush, and then he went into the big shul to be part of the general hakafas. And over there, the Alter Rebbe would only say the first and last pasuk of Ata Haresa, and would only dance the first and the 7th hakafa. It's interesting that our Rebbe Zolzunzain, the first night, says only the first and last pasuk of Ata Haresa out loud, and the second night and second day, Ata Haresa is repeated 3 times. The first time the Rebbe says all the pasukim of Ata Haresa out loud, and the second time and third time only the first and last pasuk. In reference to hakafas, both nights the Rebbe dances the first and 7th hakafa only. That night, something unusual happened. The Alter Rebbe asked for 3 chassidim: Reb Michal Aaron of Vitebsk, Reb Shabtai Meir of Beshnikovitz, Reb Yankiv of Smilon. When he walked in, the Alter Rebbe turned to Reb Michal and said, "You're a Kohen." He turned to Reb Shabtai and said, "You're a Levi." He turned to Reb Yankiv and said, "You're a Yisrael. I need a bezdin of 3, and the bezdin should consist of Kohen, Levi, and Yisrael. And I chose you to be my bezdin. Listen to the kiddush I'm going to make now. Answer Amen after every bracha, and you should have in mind that you're including all the thoughts and all the kavanas that I have in my mind." The Alter Rebbe requested a specific measurement of wine for the kiddush, and he made kiddush. After he made kiddush, the leftover of the cup, he poured into a bottle, and he said to the bezdin that they're being appointed for a specific mission, a shlichus harafua, a mission of healing. They should take the wine, and they should pour in more wine, so it will be enough to give out to all the sick people, and it should be for the full shleima. The Alter Rebbe also added to announcement to be made in the Ezras Nashim in the women's section, that those women who weren't blessed with a child yet should drink this wine, and that'll be a bracha that they'll have a child. Or women who unfortunately had miscarriages or other problems with having a healthy baby, this will be a bracha for their birth. Immediately word spread that this wine will bring the bracha to those men that are sick and all the women that need the bracha. And the bezdin of 3, Reb Michal Aaron, Reb Shabtai Meir, and Reb Yankiv, took a group of young men who were physically strong to be able to help push through the crowd and be able to do the technical work of distributing the wine. When the bezdin walked into the shul, there was total silence. Everyone knew that this was the bezdin that the Alter Rebbe appointed. And the Alter Rebbe made them for the shluchim, for the full of the Yeshua. And everyone looked at them with great awe and respect. Rabbi Yankiv, one of the 3 of the bezdin, gave over word for word of what the Alter Rebbe said. Then they asked another individual who had a very high and powerful voice that he should repeat what the Alter Rebbe said. After that, Rabbi Yankov said the following. Although what I told you now are the words of the Alter Rebbe, we're now going to add a few words of our own. And that is that it's known, a tradition by the older Chassidim, who received this from the older Chassidim of the previous generation, that when a Rebbe gives a bracha, in order for the bracha to be fulfilled, there are two conditions. One condition is, the one who receives the bracha believes with complete faith in the one that's giving the bracha, without thought of doubt. The second condition is that the one who's receiving the bracha dedicates himself with complete loyalty to fulfill the will of the one that's giving the bracha, when it comes to davening and learning and observance of mitzvahs. After this announcement, they began to distribute the wine. After this, the next morning, everyone was talking about the great miracle. Rabbi Avraham the Reifer, Rabbi Avraham the doctor, said that true, by many of the sick people was a great miracle, but by some of the older people, he said, I would consider it Tchiyas HaMeisa Mamish, because from a medical point of view, there's absolutely no way that they could have survived. And it was a complete mess, l'maylam derech hateva, that they are still alive. This miracle made Rabbi Isaac into a chassid. When Rabbi Moshe came back and is completely well, that's when Rabbi Isaac decided he's becoming a chassid of the Alter Rebbe. And what affected him most of all was to see that pure emunah, the pure faith and emunah in the Rebbe's words. And he said, had I not seen this with my own eyes, I would never believe it. Someone should be so sick to go out in such a weather. There's no way that in anybody's mind this can be accepted as a normal thing to do. But only because the Rebbe said so, and they had such confidence in the Rebbe's word, they had absolutely no doubt and no fear in doing so. That affected him. He became a chassid, and he began to learn the Maimon of the Alter Rebbe, and became one of the biggest chassidim of the Alter Rebbe.